Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. Thank you for joining our Digital Workplace webinar series. This is webinar 3 focused on the meeting solutions today. I am very excited to be talking about a lot of content we have today focused around meeting solutions and the meeting spaces. So, with that, let's get started. This is the agenda for today's webinar. We're going to do quick introductions, talk about how the meetings are in our today's work culture, and then we're going to touch on some effective meeting solutions. What does that actually mean for a meeting to be effective, including different participants, equipment, devices, so on and so forth. Then we're going to talk about evaluating meeting solutions spaces. So we're going to talk about how to evaluate your existing spaces, some methodology that we employ here at Netrix for our clients. And then we're going to talk about how Microsoft Teams is transforming the way we do meetings. And then we're going to talk about a couple of things that we offer to our clients to revolutionize their meeting spaces and the meeting solutions, and then tackle any Q&A towards the end. So throughout this webinar, if there's any questions, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A sections. We will handle them as they come up, or we will kind of keep that towards the end and kind of go through them at the end. So let's do a quick introduction. So my name is Satyendra Sharma. I am one of the field CTO here at Netrix from the digital workplace practice. I have been with Netrix for over 7.5 years now, based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I live with my family here. That includes my amazing wife and 2 young daughters. What I love doing is I love solving business problems using technology. And my focus is digital workplace. So modernizing the communication landscape for our clients is what I love doing. So since we are talking about meetings today, let's take a look on how big of a part meetings are in our day-to-day work today, right? So I couldn't think of a better title for this slide, so we just are going with meetings, 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 because I'm pretty sure all of you on this webinars experience the same work life. As you know, we have some stats over here. So to start with, there is a meeting overload happening in the industries. Employees are spending over 80% of their time in doing some sort of collaborative activities. That may include meetings, group chat, group text, ad hoc call, group call, all kinds of collaboration activities. More teams. As the workforce is evolving, you will experience that people are now part of more than one team or more than 2 teams, whatever their previous work lifestyle was. People are getting added. Like personally myself, I get added to a lot of Teams channel, right, which is another form of collaboration. So now we are getting added to more and more meeting, and that's generating a lot of collaborative activities, right? And then collaboration surge. There is an estimated 50% surge in the collaboration activities, whether it's between your coworkers, outside contractors, suppliers, and customers. If we look at this, some of the stats from the hybrid work trends, there is about 57% remote employees are shifting back to some sort of hybrid models, right? And we're going to dive a little bit more about it, what that actually means. And 54% of the IT leaders are investing more in a hybrid-friendly meeting spaces just to support that surge in the hybrid work lifestyle. Some of the challenges that people are facing right now is, especially with meeting spaces, is underutilized rooms, poor user experience, lack of visibility into usage, just not good stuff. And we are going to unpack that a little bit more in this webinar. We're going to throw a couple of more stats at you guys. A lot of this information is coming from the Microsoft Work Trend Index report. If you have not looked at it, go check it out. A lot of fascinating information. Not going to touch on all of these particular data points, but just a couple to call out is the collaboration is evolving, right? So if you look on the left side here, there's a 52% employees um, are motivated to use some sort of digital metaverse type team meeting arrangement, right? Um, the last one is interesting. Staying connected is harder, right? So even with all these technologies we have, there is about 43% of remote employees who attend meetings don't feel included, right? And I'm sure all of you experience the same thing when joining the meetings or when you have attendees connecting from remote. Either they're not heard, they're not on video, they're always quiet. We don't know if they're actively even listening or participating in the meeting. On the right side here is some of the technical side of the challenges that we have. Um, about 93% of the meeting rooms are not equipped with adequate technology to support today's work culture. Uh, the usability is not there, again, due to some sort of technical issues or ease of usage. This slide is a little dated, but the projection here is by 2025, there is going to be about six-fold increase in video devices, and it is happening, right? So we as a system integrator, we are seeing it on the field that people are deploying more and more equipment to support the new hybrid work culture. So that all being said, what are we dealing with is hybrid meetings, and it is the new normal, right? It all started uh, with the pandemic, really amplified the whole thing, right? Pre-pandemic, most of the people were going into the office. It was not even a concern. People are having more face-to-face time. So that was the normal before pandemic. When the pandemic hit, there was a lot of people working remote, right? So remote work became the new norm, and everybody was essentially there was a flat playing field. Um, then moving forward, now people are coming back into the office. Some people are still remote. Some people are hybrid. People moved, things like that. Going forward, how do we update our meeting setup so that everybody is included, right? That's the hybrid workforce that we're going to talk about, whether you're in the office or remote. So, these are all the challenges and stats that we saw, which is good to know. There is a lot of, movement and shift happening in the work culture. But what is effective meeting solution? Like, what does that even mean? To break it down, I only have three small points about it. User experience is on the top, which is really what we are after. We want the users to have a frictionless joining experience and a consistent quality, right? Like when I push a button into the meeting room, I, as a user, expect things to work, right? If there is any delay or not connecting or network error or people can't hear me, people can't see me, those are the things that's going to prohibit me as a user to use the technology. So we just want the best user experience. Interoperability, not everybody that you work with is going to be on the same platform. You may be using Teams, your client may be using Zoom, your partner may be using Cisco. So we have all this different technology in the mix now. We want a seamless interoperability. I'm not going to buy new devices for each meeting platform, right? Like I want a solution that can interoperate seamlessly. And scalability is the other one. So we also want a similar meeting solution to be scalable, right? Whether it's a small huddle room, 1-2 person conference room, or a global deployment, including massive boardrooms and custom rooms and classroom type situation. We want similar solution, highly scalable, users are happy with it. And then from a user perspective, how does this really affect them, right? So here is an example of good versus bad. So this user here, uh, on the top, the good experience, she's able to join meetings, she can have a natural conversation uninterrupted, she can see people, she can be seen by others, her audio is heard if she's doing a meeting sharing, her content is shared seamlessly and she's focused on the conversation. The result is user is happy and they're productive. Now, on the flip side, when there is a bad experience, what happens, right? People are having issues joining meetings. People cannot hear each other, or there's a lot of background noise happening because the user may be working from a common space, from a Starbucks or something. The audio seems to be blurry; it's not catching up. Jitter, buffer, packet loss, like all these elements come into the play. Presentation is not working. The end result is the user is unhappy, things are not working, they're distracted, they are not productive, which is what we want to avoid. And this flow technically could be applicable to not only just meeting and meeting spaces, to anything, right? Even for a team's voice, team's phone, like it applies to the same fundamentals. So now we take that same scenario, right? And then we look at what are the influencers that could cause that issue. So to start with, the room acoustics. So now we are in the meeting room or meeting space context. What kind of space is that, right? What kind of room is that? Is that a noisy room? Are there kids in the background? Is there a dog barking, right? Things like that. And then what kind of devices are in play? Are these devices optimized for a real-time collaboration type usage, right? Um, does the device have enough performance to do any kind of encoding of the audio, right? The audio sound wave has to be translated into a digital format and then compressed and shipped over so that it can be delivered on the other side in a timely fashion, right, in a reasonable time. So that's where the device comes into the play, the compute power of the device in use, and then what kind of codec the device is even using. Or they're using the optimized codec for best performance. That's why using the certified devices becomes important, right? And then the network, right? So like when we talk to clients, a lot of the time they're focused so much on network, uh, but the devices, like this is where the device and the components used in the meeting room and meeting spaces plays a lot bigger role before even we talk about your network, right? So that's why optimizing all these components is very, very important. So now that we know the components that altogether influence the overall user experience, uh, what can we do to assess? So you may be in a situation where you already have meeting solutions deployed in your rooms, on endpoints, user laptops, things like that. Or you may be in a situation where you are just thinking about upgrading your conference room or deploying your conference room. You have new facility you have to plan for, to make sure those conference room in the new facility is going to be working in an optimal capacity. All right. So what can we do? We're going to take a look at that here. So when we look at room spaces, we break down the consideration in those six bubbles on the top, right? So these are the building blocks for any room spaces. The building blocks are essentially the same in most cases. Uh, the scale just changes, right, of those building blocks. So when we look at a small huddle room type situation, you know, how are users going to connect it, right? You almost have to emulate a persona of how a user is going to come in. They may want a tablet on the tabletop. They can go and tap and join meeting, which means it has to be schedulable. Or users can walk in their laptop, plug it in through HDMI, and then they just expect things to work, right? Things like that. And then we talk about, the same component on the other side. What kind of cameras? Is this a regular camera? Is it a content camera? Are we doing any kind of like intelligent framing for people to detect, faces and things like that? Same thing with microphone. What is your microphone situation in the room? Is it sufficient to pick up everybody's audio in that room? Right? For small rooms, typically it's fine. But the moment we start scaling the room size up, the mic becomes kind of a important factor, right? On this picture over here, the right one, the medium to large, you can see there are two little microphones, right, separately deployed, and those are essentially working with the main brains of the room to extend the mic coverage, audio pickup. um, Camera management, your camera field of view, like how big of a angle do you want to capture? Are we going to zero in on the active speaker or not? Right? Like that's the other thing. Cable management, we all have seen rooms where there is a bunch of cable just zip tied together on the top. And then you just go through all these cables like, oh, which one is going to fit in my laptop, right? We don't want that. So cable management is also a very big element of the meeting room experience. Acoustics, what kind of walls are we talking about? What kind of ceilings are we talking about? Are there a lot of glass windows? Um, those things all factor on how the acoustics is going to be in the room. And I think the last one is the most, not the most, the last one, lighting, is the least um, analyzed component of a meeting space, we feel like, right? Because uh, that's gonna that's plays a pretty big factor on how people are presented, right? Like camera is not, there are some intelligence in the cameras now. It can auto adjust the brightness and so on and so forth. But you still need a pretty good lighting in the room so that everybody's clearly visible to these devices, so they can do a better job of doing what it's supposed to be doing instead of kind of auto correcting and using the compute power to do all those unnecessary things. And the same thing goes to any scale of room, really. So, we went from small, medium, large rooms to now over here, we are talking about super large, uh, a room like classroom, auditorium type situations here. You have temporary wall that can come and split the room, or you can fold those things away. And now you have one giant room for your auditorium type capability, right? Um, Again, people are going to be sitting all over the place. We want them to be heard. Uh, there is always an option to kind of pass the mic around, but there is technologies that can solve those issues. Field of view changes significantly. Now we are focused on a lot bigger space than just a small huddle room. Cable management, again, like I said, the fundamentals is the same, but the scale changes. The executive room over here on the right side, we see um, the one thing I love about this room is the lighting, right? So you can see the lighting on the top is actually following all the attendees that will be sitting in that room. So that's one great example of how a lighting should be done. Again, all these things takes time and planning, right? And then the mic pickup. Like you can notice on the table, there is no individual mic sitting in front of every seat, right? So the microphone is actually in the ceiling. There's an array of mic that can detect the active speaker and pinpoint that person. So all these things factors into your assessment of the rooms. Just to expand on a little bit more, right, from a visual perspective, I'm a visual person, and a lot of my clients, when we talk to them, visual does all the speaking for us for the most part. Uh, So here we can see, right, like from a speaker perspective, how big of the audio range is. Are people, we all have been in rooms where even if it's a small room, there's a situation going on, we have some extra people in the room, not enough chairs, people are standing by the wall in the corners. Can they even hear what's being said on the speaker, right? Those things you have to also factor in. If there is a bigger room, add multiple speakers um, and mics. The next slide is on mics. So speaker and mic. And then how do we make sure these mics work in coordination? So it's not, one mic is active and the other one is not, right? things like that. So it's got like intelligence built into it. And that's why using some of the certified devices or a system integrator like ourselves coming in and doing an assessment is crucial for a successful meeting rollout. So just to summarize what we covered, right? So these are again the same fundamental bubbles that we were talking about across all the rooms in a little more descriptive manner, right? Camera types. There are different kinds of camera. Field of view. Do you want pan, tilt, zoom, PTZ cameras? Auto tracking, IntelliFrame, and then cost is always a factor, right? So mic array, how many mics do you want? Audio pickup range, like actually do a testing of it, and it has to be a high fidelity, right? Because if your mic is not picking up a high fidelity audio, it's going to only send garbage on the other end, right? So the better the mic is on the front end, the better the recipient of that audio will get the quality delivered to them. Cable management, right? Like conceal wherever possible what you currently have, knowing that is if you're working with existing rooms and equipment, like that becomes a little more important, right? And there's a little more information on that. Acoustic, we talked about, materials of the wall, room, ceiling, things like that all plays into it. And then lighting, like I said, it's kind of the most ignored component, but it's really important. So now that we have talked about the equipment and mic and speaker and cable management, the displays, right? Like this is another thing that is important to put some thoughts into when planning your room systems. There are 4K displays, there is 8K display, right? The Ks are just getting bigger and bigger, but in reality, is that really needed, right? Just because the display is compatible to do a 4K projections, um, 4K also eats up a ton of bandwidth. We are talking about 2.5x of your 1080p type display, right? And then the human eye can't even recognize, especially if you're sitting in a close proximity like that, right? In a conference room type situation. So uh, display planning. Do we need what kind of connectivity needs for that display, right? Now we are talking about people bringing in their HDMIs, their USB-Cs, like what do we need to support power consumption? Is also very missed component, right? Like you don't want displays to be running all the time, even if the meeting rooms are not used. We have created reports and stats where it actually using the right display and the right configuration to put them in sleep mode or power saving mode. Like sleep mode also consumes power. So there is a completely different mode we can put these devices into, and it can save over time a lot of money in power, right? So those things also matter. Um, Single or dual monitors, right? Like this is a lot of the time people are like, oh yeah, just throw two monitors, that sounds good. But then what's the dimension is of the wall, and how big do you want to force it in there, right? And also what the room usage is like. Are we going to be talking more focus on content, on video, or both? So if most cases when you do dual monitors, we can split the content versus the videos, right? But if it's a smaller room, then maybe just the content and the video tile on the side is enough. And then just overall aesthetics, right? Like what's the dimension? Like it has to look good too at the end of the day. One of the other thing that people don't really consider unless we get into it and we go do a site survey, things like that. Can the wall even handle the load of all these devices, right? All these monitors they're heavy, especially when you add like all the mounts and component that goes behind it. We had scenarios where the wall was just not built to handle all the load, uh, and then that's why you see some of the vendors now, they have their own like cart and like the stand that comes in, and then the monitor basically sits on that stand, so it doesn't even depend on the wall. So things to consider over there too. Of course, we cannot forget security when we talk about this, right? So one of the hot topics with room deployments is the accounts, the passwords, the conditional access, and things like that. Uh, don't as we don't really. There are ways to protect these accounts without using these traditional methods of password expiration, forcing MFA, things like that. Nobody's going to be doing an MFA on behalf of a device every time the device reboots at night for the scheduled maintenance, right? And that's going to end up causing a lot more issues than you think it will secure the devices. There are certain guidelines that we follow for this room account. There are different policies, different control mechanism to identify where the accounts are connecting from, what devices it's connecting from, to validate whether it's a legitimate or a malicious type login, right? And that's how we secure these devices. So there is also a layer of Microsoft Defender we can overlay on top of it, which can analyze this login attempt is coming from a valid source or not. And if it is not passing all those check marks from your conditional policy or the security policies, the logins are disabled or blocked anyway, right? So there are other ways to secure these devices instead of using the traditional method. That being said, those all have to be planned, right? Like you cannot be mixing these device account with your regular user account policies and cause issues. So we have to kind of plan a parallel approach for all these room accounts to make sure they are taken care of properly, and not run into any issues down the road. Here is a visual of what kind of I just talked about, right? So conditional access. So there is signaling, right? So all these signals, location, what kind of device, what application is trying to access to, what network is connecting from. We take all the signals, we run it through a set of policies in your conditional access, Microsoft security side of it, and those can be limited to just specific apps, right? A Teams room does not need access to, I don't know, like OneDrive or anything other than Teams, right? So we can like narrow it down to those specific apps. And then if all this device location, application, everything passes, then we let it go, right? The device can even be Azure enrolled, for example. So it's connecting from a compliant device and not just any BYOD type device. So all these things can be planned. So from a security, right? So now we kind of like all this when we talked about the user experience and the influencers, uh, at the end there was that network component, right? Which is always going to be there. So we cannot overlook the network that is essentially connecting everything. So there is guidelines. If you're already using Teams for your users, most likely you have gone through. I hope you have. But make sure the right ports and protocols are open for your endpoints to connect to Microsoft 365, right? For Teams, for media, um, and those URLs and IPs also get updated. So make sure you have mechanisms there to update your configuration whenever there is new updates introduced from the Microsoft service. Bypass proxies inspection, deep packet inspection. You don't really need all that for Teams workload. These devices are already using encrypted connection. They're using encrypted media. So no need to uh, do a dual layer of inspection, and that just causes issues more than helping the environment, right? So there is recommendations on it, guidance, configuration guidance, depending upon what kind of firewall proxies you're using. We help clients to fine tune the environment so that these components do not factor into quality issues down the road. DNS resolution is also a big one. Um, it's we run into that run situation like this more often than I thought. But that whole notion of hub and spoke type network, right? Like when everything is coming to your data center and egressing out of your data center, that's just not optimized for a SaaS-based solution, right? Like we want endpoints to connect to Microsoft Cloud as quick as possible, as close as possible, That's why Microsoft has this massive network, and they have a front door service for clients to connect closest, from their geography. So make sure that you're letting your clients go out locally so they can connect to their closest Microsoft connection points. The shortest path to internet, ensure there is plenty of bandwidth on your network. There is network planners that we can help execute and plan. So depending upon what workload we are using, it spits out like projections on your WAN bandwidth, your internet bandwidth. So make sure we are going through those exercises so your pipes are sized properly. And deploy QoS where needed. So it's where needed is uh, there because your QoS is only going to be applicable on your network, right? Once you hit the internet, then the QoS will not be applicable on it. So if you have network congestions, those things will have to most likely be mitigated before we add more load onto it. But if for some reason you just want to make sure your team's traffic is prioritized over everything else, you can still implement QoS on the internal network at least. So, room assessment, a couple of additional things we want to talk about on, when you are thinking about doing a room assessment, what does that mean? And to help this, we have some questions over here for you. So, just key information, right? What is the goal for this room? Is it an executive meeting space? That changes things quite a bit, right? Or is it an open area? What kind of wall we're talking about? Can the wall support the display weight, right? Like I mentioned, like make sure those walls are constructed. They have enough support to take on the weight of these displays, especially if you're talking about adding multiple displays. Um, conduits, um, how are the cable going to be run? Are there any acoustic issues? Like we can help go and evaluate all these attributes in your room to make sure those things are factored in when we design a good room solutions for you, right? So the dimension of the room, length, width, height, so things like that. We can go and do measurement of the room and kind of make recommendation based on that as well. The key element of out of the assessment comes out is obviously size, furniture, what material, light, and sound. Uh, these are the key factors that we assess to make sure the rooms are going to be working properly. And what best way to kind of document everything? Take pictures. So every time we engage with clients, either we go on site or we are working with on-site resources, documenting everything, uh, taking pictures usually works the best, right? That way we can just look at the picture, see what's going on, and then go from there, right? So take a picture from outside of the room going in, take a wide angle picture. Everybody can zoom out on their iPhones and whatnot and take like a bigger holistic picture. If there are any whiteboard, where are they deployed in comparison to your room systems? Take the picture of ceilings, right? Like, and then the outlets and the wiring under the table. What is the conduit situation like? Can it handle more connectivity, or do we have the right kind of cable coming in? Do we have Ethernet cable connection? Does PoE, so on and so forth. So just documenting everything in a picture format usually works the best. And if you have an existing equipment deployed in the room, uh, how is that connected, right? Like we like to know what kind of make model those components are, how are they connected, where is the wiring running from, if there is a wall mount equipment already, what is that mount like? So just turn the TV around like in the picture and then capture what kind of mount it is. If we can reuse it, is it compatible or not? It just helps us validate all those check boxes. So those were all the sections about meeting spaces, right? A lot of things we covered here. So Like I mentioned, this is a pretty packed agenda. So now we are going to switch the gear and we're going to talk about Microsoft Teams and how Microsoft Teams is changing the way we do meeting. Okay. So if you're not familiar already, Microsoft Teams is a collaboration tool by Microsoft. It's got end user, you know, application, as well as it has a whole meeting and meeting room uh, section of the platform, right? So we have individual workspaces, and then people use personal devices, work from home, desk phones. Yes, people still deploy desk phones for certain use cases. We are not quite there yet where we can completely discard them. So most of my clients when we work with, there's always some use cases, whether it's a receptionist or front desk, they need a physical desk phone, potentially with sidecars and things like that. Then we have a group workspace situation, which is where we are talking about collaborative workspaces or meeting rooms. That's where we deploy Teams conference room phones. So those star phones for a smaller room that doesn't really need any kind of display projection, things like that. And then some of the star phones also support satellite microphones for extra audio pickup coverage, right? And then we have the whole set of Teams room systems. There is plenty of vendors available out there. They create Teams room solution with various device configuration. Um, and then we have companion devices like Surface Hubs, content camera, things like that. So it does have a whole meeting solution package in it, right? Um, So the benefit of the Teams, if it's deployed already, is obviously part of your Microsoft productivity ecosystem, familiar interface. You can do chat, Teams, channel, and then on top of that, we can also add voice meetings. So it's just a natural progression of using the same familiar tool, and it's all backed by Microsoft Trust Center, right? So it's all secured, protected. Um, it is it respects all your Entra ID configuration, your conditional access. It's a robust, secured platform. So some of the component from a Microsoft Teams meeting standpoint, we're going to touch on, not all of them, otherwise we will be here for a very long time. Just a few we wanted to highlight in this webinar. Teams panel. So if you have not seen this already, Teams panel is a device that sits outside of the meeting rooms, essentially kind of telling you what the meeting room is, what is happening in it, right? Is it available? Is it booked? Who is it booked by? Things like that. You can actually walk up and reserve the room. If you want to start an ad hoc meeting, you can go ahead and book it uh, in any bookable spaces. I don't know if that's a valid word, but schedulable, bookable, same thing. So the calendar invite that you send to a meeting room, that will show up on that display outside of it as well, right? So you can, and these are all manageable. So just like managing a Teams room system, we can manage the display, you can configure them, you can add custom applications on it if needed to control certain aspect of the room, right? So there could be a, outside or inside. It pairs with your Teams room system, so it's essentially kind of a not carbon copy, but they work in coordination. It turns red when it's in the meeting. It turns green when it's available. The one thing I liked about this one is the bottom feature is to alert the people. You know, I think we've all been in situation where a meeting before your meeting is going over time, and you're standing outside contemplating what to do, right? You knock the door, whatnot. But these tablets, um, you can send a nudge internal to people so they can be like, oh, we are running over time, we have to get out. People are waiting. But I like that feature a lot. The other thing to talk about is intelligent speaker. So intelligent speaker is pretty cool. What it is, in a nutshell, is a technology plus device combined effort to detect people, right? So if you are in a conference room A, and there are 5 people in there, we don't know who is talking, right? Like if I'm a remote attendee and I actually happen to be on the road or something like that, or I may not know who's. I'm new to the attend, to the team. I don't know who's speaking. So what the intelligent speaker does, it takes a audio recognition from user, and then it starts tagging the people with their name when they're in this meeting space type situation, right? So in this screenshot over here, you can see this person Quinn is in a conference room 1234, which is in that bracket, but he's identified by his actual name, even though he's in the conference room. Same thing with the person above him, right? So they're getting tagged by their actual name and not just a generic conference room, which is pretty cool. And there is some configuration to be done on the intelligent speaker, especially from the Teams room side, right? So you can kind of go and configure as a peripheral device the microphone that's going to be doing the audio pickup. And then we have to configure the team meeting policy to essentially include transcription so that the transcription gets tagged by their actual username. It is part of your Teams Room license, or if you have a Teams Premium as a user, it also is part of that as well. What it uses to take people is essentially your audio voice prints, right? And this came out a while back where you go into your Teams client and now you can actually do your audio as well as your video recognition, right? So it can detect your face as well as your audio. A lot of the people are like, "Oh my God, it's taking my voice now." It's been happening already. Like it's been happening in other areas that you interact with on a very constant basis for a while. Like I call my bank and they know exactly just by my voice who am I, and I get redirected and the person answers like, you know says my name. So it requires for a user to enroll their voice print, and then it kind of starts tagging. So you have to make sure your policy allows this recognition, and then the users go and actually enroll themselves into their voice, and this is available within the Teams client under setting. The next point to talk about is content camera. So if you haven't seen this already, or I think there was a magic whiteboard was the other term that was kind of quite hot for a while. But what this content camera is, it's a peripheral device that works alongside with your Teams room system, just focused on a whiteboard. So you can see that picture on the slide. The top one is if somebody is just like looking at the whiteboard right before uh, a camera is pointing to it essentially. But the content camera, it enhances that particular whiteboard section as a clear image for remote attendees so they can actually see properly what's been written on this whiteboard and not just make guesses or have questions afterwards, right? So content camera focused on that. There are certified content cameras that do this kind of work. And then there is also a mount essentially on the wall to position the camera properly so it is doing its thing in the best possible configuration. The other thing is proximity join. This has also have been out for a while, but what this really is if you're in the meeting space or your office, you're on a meeting on your phone, you walk by a conference room, or if you go see a conference available, it uses a Bluetooth beaconing to basically tell your devices, or it detects that hey, there is a conference room available nearby. We want to join that. So you just tap on this pop-up, go into the room, and then your phone essentially turns into a content endpoint, and your audio and video gets transitioned to the meeting rooms, which is optimized for that kind of workload, right? You can also control the conference room system through it gives you a control on your mobile app. to control certain things about your conference room systems, but it's a very easy way to transition your meeting from a small device to available room on just one click, really, right? So it's a very popular feature. There is some enhancements coming to it. So now we're going to have proximity join as well as a QR code based join. So your rooms could have a QR code displayed on them when they're not in use. You can go scan that QR code, start a meeting, join an existing meeting, and just kind of easily elevate your meeting experience. There is a watermark feature available in Teams meeting, and this is again data privacy, data protection. A lot of law firm, security companies, financial companies, when they're especially meeting with outside parties, they're sharing something, proprietary or confidential in nature. This watermark is really, really beneficial. The nice thing is that it watermarks your screen sharing as well as your video feed. So in this example, you can see this, the text written on the page, and you can obviously configure all the text and how dense you want to make it appear. But you can do this if you have Teams premium license. So it can, like I said, it can do it on a video feed, and also it can do on a screen sharing, which is really nice. PowerPoint Live. So if you do a desktop share, it's there, but the PowerPoint Live and Excel Live support is coming soon. So just be aware of that. Meeting recaps. So if you happen to be using a Teams Premium or a Copilot license, you are hopefully using this already. We use it a lot internally, huge time saver for us. But it's essentially, if a meeting is recorded in a recap section after the meeting is concluded, you can go and see the recap. And these are AI generated notes using Copilots. And then it also has a personalized timeline markers, which is pretty beneficial because if I have to go back and watch a meeting, I don't need to make any guesses on, oh, what part should I be watching out of this 3 hour meeting. I can just go find specifically when the client started talking, if that's what I wanted to go back and review, right? And then you have at the bottom the speaker timeline. You can literally click on those markers and it will take the video feed to that point in the recording. And there is also a chapter section. So you can see in the bottom, it's highlighted chapter, essentially like a YouTube style, right? So there's like a different section of the video. It categorizes based on the content shared and discussed in the meeting. So if you have Teams Premium, this is available. If you have Copilot, this is definitely available. If you need help, we are also doing a lot of this Copilot readiness for clients as well. One of the misconception is you don't have to record the meetings completely, right? Like, so you can have these recaps just on a transcription only meeting. So if you did not record the meeting completely, like the video feed and everything, but even if you turn on the transcription, that is sufficient for the AI summary to be generated after the meeting is concluded, right? So just kind of be aware of that. The live caption is the other component. So there are two flavors of live caption, just to clarify. The live caption standard is available. You can go and turn it on. It will show you the supported language, the dialect that's being spoken in the meeting. There is also a concept of live translated caption that requires a Teams premium license, which is where you can take a meeting that is being conducted in English and convert it, the live caption in German or something like that, right? So like cross language translation is available, but that is a Teams premium feature. I think the last thing we want to touch about today is Microsoft Places. This is one of those new components that's out by Microsoft. And what it is essentially an AI-powered workplace. It helps the workplace solution to unlock new levels of coordination, modernization, and optimization. What's very cool about this is that it is helping organizations to do more coordination in terms of in-person meetings, remote meetings, help people align their schedules when people are going to be in the office remote so they can best utilize the space, especially the corporate meeting spaces when people do go into the office. We all have been in situation where um, I know I go into the office, I join a meeting on my desk, and then I go for lunch and I run into the people who were on that meeting. And I was like, shoot, we should have done this meeting in person, right? So, like, those guesses or the unknowns is being mitigated by things like Microsoft Places. So, what it does, the three category is, it helps people coordinate the place, purpose, modernize. It is improving the experience, how people work and schedule meetings. And then from an administration perspective, it's also helping optimize so you can really track some of the utilization of your corporate spaces. You can use this to do desk reservation. There is components like auto release, so your resources aren't locked out. If somebody reserved it and did not come to the office, things like that. So it's really, really neat in all those aspects. There are three categories when it comes for Microsoft Places license. So there is a core component that gives you like core capability, which is essentially creating a work plan. And then there is a premium feature that allows some of the Places Explorer. You can find rooms based on where people are in your meeting. Um, and then there is a co-pilot that can make recommendations on when to go into the office by looking at other people's work plan, and then suggest meeting rooms uh, in a best situation. So if you're scheduling, for example, scheduling a meeting with 5 people, one of them is building one and four of them are in building two, Copilot will make recommendation using leveraging Places information that, hey, here is a room in building two close to these other people that might be the most optimized room. No, also factoring the size and how many seats and things, capacity information. So it's really nice. So once you have Places, a couple of things changes in your Outlook. For example, in this example over here, you can now select to accept a meeting virtually in person, right? So that again is adding that context of where you will be, so people can align better to be more in person, right? If you're going to be all in person. Um, so plan your workday. On the top over here is where it shows this little blue building. So you can configure in your tenant and project different places, right? Like office, home, building one, building two, wherever. And then it will make recommendations, sit together. So like all these people are in the office. So it's recommending to sit together with Tim and others in the most optimal location. And Copilot is also making recommendation, right? So it's once the information is populated in the tenant, it can make recommendation. Hey, it's a great day to go into the office, but again, you have to have Microsoft Places plus Copilot for some of these AI recommended features to show up, right? So if you are somebody who's looking to get started with Places, we here at Netrix are also helping clients to get them started. So we can certainly help with getting the kickstart for this thing. This is a quick screenshot of the administration side. So actionable insight is, your utilization, how many people are actually going in, desk reservation, uh, you know, create your pool, auto release type configuration. So if you have common spaces, people can book it to come into the office. If somebody doesn't come, like how long do you want to hang on to it before it goes back into the pool, right? So, and then your occupancy, it can also track in some rooms if those equipments are properly deployed and designed. Um, so very cool. If you haven't, please check it out and let us know. We'll be more than happy to help on this. So as we are nearing the timeline here on the webinar, just want to take a couple of set slides and talk about how we are helping clients. Um, Simply put, in a system integrator role, right? So like all the things we talked about, designing, planning rooms, your spaces, ordering equipment, shipping, delivery, and the project management thing, make sure we are coordinating with facilities and getting the hardware installed in time, all those sort of things we take care of. In other words, we can do white glove service if needed. There is a new concept of bring your own meeting kind of ramping up in the industry. So this is essentially where people bring their own meeting solution that they want to work with your existing room systems, right? So kind of like a spin on BYOD, but it's bring your own meeting. So if I have a meeting solution on my mobile phone, I walk up to a Teams room systems in my office. Um, it will be able to integrate and work with it. So we are starting to kind of design plan a lot of those kind of deployments. And then, deployment, obviously the installation of the room systems, education, training is also important, right? So like, even though the things may be simpler to operate for us technical folks, for some of the non-technical people, we still need to do a training. So whether it's a recorded video, a one pager, just how to guides, things like that we can provide. From a another visual perspective, these are some of the key milestones in this different project phases that we engage in. We can help with inventory, device selection. There's plenty of options out there. Which one should you choose and why? Right. So with our industry knowledge, we are able to make recommendations based on the surveys that we did on what equipment to will work best for you. Adoption, maintenance and support, deployment readiness, basically end-to-end room system deployments we can provide you. Lastly, the reporting and monitoring. So designing and deploying room systems, your job is not done there, right? Like we need to make sure those systems are up to date, they're online, especially when we are talking about critical rooms like boardroom and executive rooms. We cannot have a component failure in that room and turns out 10 minutes later there is an executive meeting taking place. That is a big problem. So we are helping clients to create proactive maintenance and monitoring uh, to keep everything up to date, whether it's a hardware refresh, firmware update, software update, even on-site support we can do. And then just create a transition upgrade plan to make sure you are always on the latest, greatest components, software versions, so that we don't run into any kind of unforeseen issues. In a summary, just to recap in a bullet points, essentially what I just talked about, we can help you with all these things, uh, even if it comes down to advisory services, right? So if you have existing solution, it's not working properly, we can help optimize it. If you are a new deployment, we can help design, build, plan it. If you're an existing or new deployment, if you need that support layer, we can provide that management support for you. If you're looking to get started with Microsoft Places, we can get you started with that as well. And then if you're just looking for ad hoc advisory services, consulting, those are also available here with Netrix. The last piece of thing I want to leave here is our next upcoming webinar, which is next month in July. That will be focused on our contact center evolution topic. So pretty hot topic in the industry. Be sure to check it out and sign up to attend that session. It's going to be awesome, and we're gonna bring a lot of good material for this webinar. All right, so I think with that, we are up on time. I want to thank you again for everyone joining, making the time to join this webinar. It's really appreciated. Here's how you can get in touch with us. If you have any other questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. And I hope we all have a great day. Thank you.